Let's start. The threats are. There are no threats in this position. Checks in this position are. f5 check. The best move in puzzle position is. a5. Pawn takes pawn. King takes pawn. King to d3. King to b4. Another one. Here are the threats. Pawn takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Rook to f5. Pawn takes pawn. Rook to f1. King to h7. h4. Bishop to f4. Rook to g1. Bishop to g3. Rook takes pawn, check. King to g6. Rook to g5, check. Let us go to the next puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are. Bishop takes pawn, check. Queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. Bishop takes bishop. Checks in this position are. Bishop takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes bishop. Bishop takes pawn, check. King takes bishop. Queen takes queen. Let's see the next puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Bishop takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Rook takes bishop. Checks in puzzle position are. Bishop takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is. Rook takes bishop. Rook to g8. Rook to e7. Let's continue. Threats in this position are. Knight takes pawn. Here are the checks. Queen to g2, check. Queen to h1, check. Queen to c1, check. Solution to the puzzle is. Knight takes pawn. Pawn takes knight. Queen to c1, check. King to g2. Queen to d2, check. King to h3. Queen takes rook. Next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Knight takes queen. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes bishop. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes knight. Queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The puzzle is solved using. Queen takes rook. Rook takes queen. Knight takes queen. Another puzzle. Here are the threats. There are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. Answer to this puzzle is. King to g8. Queen to b3. Queen takes bishop, check. Let us go to the next puzzle. The threats are. There are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. The answer is. Bishop to d2. Bishop takes bishop, check. Queen takes bishop. Queen to f6. Knight to d6, check. King to f8. Knight takes bishop. Rook takes knight. Queen takes knight. Let us go to the next puzzle. The threats are. King takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The answer is. King to h5. King to b7. King takes pawn. King to c7. King to h5. King to d6. King takes pawn. Let's see the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. There are no threats in this position. Checks in puzzle position are. Queen to g7, check. Queen to h8, check. The best move in puzzle position is. Bishop to e3. Another puzzle. Here are the threats. Bishop takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes knight, check. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Bishop to h5, check. Queen takes knight, check. Queen to c2, check. Queen to c1, check. Queen to a1, check. Queen to b3, check. Solution to the puzzle is. Queen to a1, check. King to e2. Knight to d4, check. Pawn takes knight. Bishop takes bishop, check. Knight to c4. Bishop takes knight, check. Let's continue. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn. Knight takes knight, check. Knight takes pawn. Bishop takes knight. Here are the checks. Knight takes knight, check. Knight to e2, check. Answer to this puzzle is. Knight takes knight, check. Pawn takes knight. Bishop takes knight. Pawn takes bishop. Bishop takes rook. Another one. The threats are. There are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. Here is the solution to the puzzle. King to h4. Queen takes rook. Pawn takes queen. Next, threats in this position are queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn. Checks in puzzle position are queen to c5, check. Queen to d4, check. The best move in puzzle position is queen to d4, check. King to f1. Queen to d1, check. King to f2. Queen to d2, check. Let's see the next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are there are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. The best move in puzzle position is bishop to c7. Pawn takes knight. Bishop takes queen. One more. Here are the threats. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Here are the checks. Queen to f7, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen to c4, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Rook takes pawn. Rook to f7. Queen takes rook, check. King takes queen. Rook takes queen. One more. Here are the threats. Rook takes knight. Bishop takes pawn. Queen takes knight, check. Here are the checks. Queen takes knight, check. Queen to e2, check. Queen to c2, check. Knight to e3, check. The best move in puzzle position is rook takes knight. Rook takes rook. Knight to e3, check. Bishop takes knight. Queen takes queen. Let's see the next puzzle. The threats are queen takes rook, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Rook takes rook. Here are checks in puzzle position. Queen to d8, check. Queen to e8, check. Queen takes rook, check. Queen to e5, check. Queen to d6, check. Queen to c7, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is knight to b3. Queen to b1, check. King to d2. Rook takes rook. Queen takes rook, check. King to c7. Queen takes rook, check. Let us go to the next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are rook takes knight. Bishop takes knight. Knight takes knight. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is queen takes bishop. Knight takes knight, check. Queen takes knight. Another puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are queen takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The best move in puzzle position is bishop to b7. Queen to a7. Rook to a8. Queen takes rook, check. Bishop takes queen. Another puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are there are no threats in this position. Checks in puzzle position are rook to g2, check. Knight to f3, check. Rook to g2, check. Rook to h1, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Rook to g2, check. Rook takes rook. Knight to f3, checkmate. Let's see the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Knight takes pawn. Bishop takes knight, check. Checks in puzzle position are knight to e6, check. Bishop takes knight, check. The best move in puzzle position is bishop takes knight, check. Bishop takes bishop. Rook takes pawn, check. Rook takes rook. Knight to e6, check. King to g8. Knight takes queen. Let us go to the next puzzle. The threats are pawn takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn, check. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Bishop takes pawn, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Bishop to d5. Knight to c6. Bishop takes knight. Another puzzle. Threats in this position are knight takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Queen to c6, check. Rook to c4, check. Rook to b1, check. The answer is queen to c6, check. Rook to c2. Queen takes rook, check. King takes queen. Knight to d4, check. Let's continue. The threats are queen takes pawn. Queen takes knight. Bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn, check. Rook takes rook. The checks are queen to d8, check. Bishop takes pawn, check. The best move in puzzle position is rook takes rook. Knight takes rook. Queen to d8, check. Queen to f8. Queen takes knight. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.